Hello and welcome to BOI Weekly. I am Kayode Alayande. One of the things the current administration has chosen to do differently is focus on social intervention and investment programs and target same at groups at the very bottom of the pyramid. Today on the program, the special advisor to the President on Social Investments, Mrs. Miriam Wace, speaks on the 4 social safety nets the federal government is providing for the most financially vulnerable across the country. These 4 programs include the school feeding program targeted at children, while other beneficiaries of the other programs include women, youth, smallholder farmers, and artisans. Today's edition would be a wider look at how these intervention programs, namely the school feeding program, Empower, cash transfer program, and the Jeep market money, which is being executed by the Bank of Industry, are being implemented. Stay close for the details. Madam Wace, can you give us a global sense of the operations at the Social Investment Office? What is that office about, really? What do Nigerians need to know about it?
Thank you. We were asked to drive 4 programs, initially 5, but we had to drop 1 because of budgetary constraints. We're hoping to pick that up this year, but essentially we have the homegrown school feeding program, which aims at feeding at least 5.5 million school children in public primary classes 1 to 3 around the country, and it's aimed at boosting nutrition, boosting enrollment in class, also empowering the women and the farmers, because the cooks that feed are generally women and they're linked to the agricultural schemes and the smallholder farmers in the state. So they buy directly from them and they feed the children. So our beneficiaries, our ultimate beneficiaries are the children. The people we pay directly are the women. So far, we've done almost 3 million children. We have a cash transfer program, and when we came in, we found there had been a number of cash transfer programs that had some successes, some not too successful. Essentially, because our aim is to reduce poverty, the first thing we needed to do was to ensure that we got the audience right. We got the target audience that we're paying right. And because we found that targeting was an issue, people would always select, program organizers would select maybe political affiliates. It was about patronage or relatives or vested interests anyway. The first thing we needed to do was to ensure that we got our audience right. So we've devised a tripartite mode of targeting, which essentially most of it was drawn from the World Bank experience from around the world that they had begun. So we're drawing up a register of this, what we call the National Social Register, and a social register for each state of the poor and the vulnerable. And what we do is decide from Abuja what local governments are the poorest by looking at the poverty mappings that exist for each state, and then engaging the states on those local governments. Now it's a third, because our budget can only cover 30% of each state. And because our mandate is to go around the entire country, and some parts are not as poor as others, we had to make it contextual. It has to be who is the poorest in this community rather than who is the poorest around Nigeria. So after we have a list that we agreed upon, we visit those households and we take down the demographics on a device that has a proxy means testing formula. Questions we ask, different fields, how many people in this family, how many people have gone to school, how many children, how many youth, physically challenged, how many wives, what are your assets. All of that information we put into the device. That's the third step. That device automatically ranks those households from the poorest to the least poor. Now, we use that to be able to determine who we will pay. So we now pay 80 women. The caregivers are generally women, and we organize them into cooperatives, organize them and try and handhold them through the period of, when we're working with them. Then we have the Empower program, which is, I think, more popular. It's aimed at addressing our gaps, but also reducing the unemployment that we have around the country. A portal is opened, and young people between the ages of 18 and 35 apply to serve either in the health sector, the agricultural sector, or to teach in primary or secondary schools. Now, when they apply, they indicate their interest and they put in their BVN and their phone numbers, date of birth, all of that. And when we do the selection process, we hold tests online. Because you see, the first time we opened the portal, it was for a period of 3 months last year. We had over 700,000 applications. And believe it or not, then it was because people were skeptical, right? People didn't believe it would happen. And of course, we needed to prune down the numbers because our target was 200,000, right? So we had to conduct tests and go through a selection process. So we had applications from every single local government of this country, 774 local governments. We had people who indicated the interest to work in any of those sectors.
I'd really like to know how much is involved in all of this social intervention.
We got an appropriation in 2016 of 500 billion naira, right? But unfortunately, because of the recession and the income that was coming in, we were only given 80 billion that we now have run out of. This year, we got an appropriation of 500 billion, but out of that money, 100 billion is going into the social housing scheme. So for our programs, we have 400 billion, right? We don't know how much we will get because every month it depends on what comes in. And then there's a discussion, finance, budget and planning, and they decide what they give us to run our programs.
All right, the federal government has asked the Bank of Industry to execute this project. Why did you choose the Bank of Industry of all banks?
Well, the Bank of Industry has a reputation of engaging, especially people that are in need, the different sectors. They've handled a number of projects with state governments, with the CBN, and they've done so successfully. So because it's financial literacy, it's issues to do with projects that would empower and enable people, make them industrious, make them entrepreneurs. It was the consensus that, look, Bank of Industry needs to be able to support, has the wherewithal, has the experience to be able to drive this.
One of the major requirements of entering into some of this social intervention, for instance, cheap market money, is that you have to belong to a cooperative society or a market association. Mm-hmm. But there are people who don't belong in any of these associations, and they're legit, they're real business people, mm-hmm. and they're equally in need of these finances. Don't you think they're being alienated?
Well, we encourage them to actually form cooperatives because, you see, we don't ask for collateral. Anywhere in the world you need to borrow money, right? You need to be able to put down something to say this is collateral for the loan. Now, with our Jeep loans, we're not asking for collateral. All we're asking for is that these people are credible and there's some kind of peer pressure on them to ensure that they pay back. Now, if you're not working in a cooperative, then nobody can make you pay back. You understand? It's getting your peers and people who you're working with You ensure that you're working with people who have credibility, who you trust, who have businesses that are being run. So they know in the cooperative that if I don't pay back, everybody else is impacted negatively. So it's like a sort of persuasion method of ensuring that people pay back.
There have been several disbursement ceremonies across the country.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest narratives that we hear is, you have to pay back. This money belongs for your business. You have to use it for your business. You have to pay back because someone else needs this money. Worst case scenario, what if someone is unable to pay because their husband...
we blacklist the entire cooperative because we have their BVNs.
But then the money is unrecovered.
Yes, but these people, if you look at it, we used to give actually 100,000 when they apply, but we have to come down to 50,000 because when you talk to them one-on-one, they say things like, oh, it's 10,000 or 50,000 or 30,000. But when they apply, because we have a cap of 100,000, they end up writing 100,000. So we're trying to test them first by giving lesser amounts to see how far they're able to return the funds before we give them the second tranche. They're entitled to apply for more, for a second time and a third time, so long as they're consistent.